Yes, guys, welcome back to the MMA Sucker podcast. As always, I'm Frazer Krohn. We're back, second week in a row. I promised you I'd stay more regular, and I am. I'm trying a new streaming setup today, so there could be a few teething problems, but on my side here, it's pretty much what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about Holloway versus Poirier to start off with at UFC 318. Don't really know why PFL Africa is after Holloway versus Poirier, because I'm going to talk about the rest of the UFC 318 main card. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about PFL Africa, and then I'm just going to touch on how good Oleksandr Usyk is at the end of the podcast. It's going to be a shorter one today because it's going to be no preview. I'm going to record a separate preview podcast later on in the week ahead of Robert Whittaker versus Rania de Ridder. I was going to condense them into one, but I just feel like I just want to talk about how good UFC 318 was. UFC 318 main event: Holloway versus Poirier. The official scorecards: Max Holloway beat Dustin Poirier at 49-46 on 2 and 48-47 on the 3rd. But that doesn't tell you much about the fight at all. We know that this was Dustin Poirier's last ever fight, and it was everything. All week we were building up to it being the last dance for Dustin Poirier, paid in full one last time, and rightfully so, because he is one of, if not the best UFC competitors to technically never win a belt, never win an undisputed belt. He won the interim belt, but he never won the undisputed belt. But he provided us with some of the best fights, some of the best rivalries. And if I could speak to Dustin, I would say you've had 3 fights with Max Holloway, you've had 3 fights with Conor McGregor, you've had 2 fights with Justin Gaethje, you've had wars with Eddie Alvarez, Michael Chandler, Dan Hooker, which is one of my favourite fights. I watched that again last week. Benoit Saint-Denis, when people were doubting you. You had the fight with Islam Makhachev. All of these great fights. What was your favourite fight, or what was your favourite rivalry? And I'd love to hear that from Dustin Poirier. I haven't heard it. I watched the press conference, didn't hear anyone ask that, but it was a very much the Dustin Poirier appreciation week, and rightfully so. I agree. I think that that's correct. And there was a great moment before Max walked out, allowing a little extra time, it seemed, for Dustin Poirier to just soak in the moment. Amazing work from Bruce Buffer to acknowledge Dustin Poirier's final ever fight. But then we got into the fight itself, and the first round was a tough one for Poirier. He was knocked down. He was knocked down heavy in that fight. I thought that was a heavy knockdown. And Max Holloway did really well. I think the leg work from Max early was great. The knockdown was clean, just a 1-2, straight 1-2 down the pipe, knocked Poirier down. And it seemed like the adrenaline from Dustin Poirier from the walkout completely dropped off a cliff after that, when that first round started, because he looked slow, he looked sloppy, and to be honest, Max Holloway, I think, dominated that first round. Like I said, the heavy knockdown, and then the sort of knockdown following that first knockdown. It's obviously not it's not been scored as a knockdown, but even so, Max dominated that first round, began to work the body in that first round, and for me, in the second, third, fourth, and fifth, Max looked quicker than ever, despite the fact that he was at lightweight. You know, he was countering pretty much everything Dustin threw at him, and he looked quicker than ever, despite the fact that he was up at lightweight. His power obviously carries better at lightweight than it does at featherweight. You know, he's competed, I think, 3 times at lightweight now. Twice against Dustin, 1 against Justin Gaethje, and he knocked Gaethje out. He knocked Poirier down, and in that first fight, he didn't get a knockdown from my memory. But he really invested in the body early, whether it was with the hands or especially with those kicks. And it must be so frustrating for Dustin. Every time he got into range, bang, Holloway just puts a little, almost like a teep or a roundhouse, or just keeps that distance, but with the legs. And it must have been really frustrating for Dustin Poirier. Now, the second round was one of the rounds of the year for me. Vintage Dustin Poirier gets hurt hurts his opponent, knocks Max Holloway down, jumps for the guillotine, jump the gilly, don't be silly. Phenomenal work from Dustin Poirier in that second round. I think he won the second round, in my opinion. It's a close one because Max definitely hurt Dustin Poirier, and it was just a case of who hurt who more. Dustin was on wobbly legs. Max Holloway was knocked down. So it's a difficult round to score. I did score it for Dustin Poirier, but just really good work from both guys in there. Again, Max was really working that body. Dustin was catching Max with the lead right hand. Really good round. The third round, I think Max Holloway was still hurt. I think he really was. He started the round very flat-footed, but recovered really well. And that answers the questions about whether his chin can hold up after being knocked out for the first time from Ilia Topuria last time out. Interestingly enough, 3 fights in a row now that Max Holloway has been knocked down. I don't think he was knocked down in his entire UFC career prior to Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje knocked him down. Ilia Topuria obviously knocked him down and knocked him out. And now Dustin's knocked him down. Just a statistic is quite an interesting one in my opinion. But like I said, he started that third round really flat-footed, and he recovered well from almost being finished. He was dropped. Poirier jumped the guillotine. Obviously, Max is never going to give up on himself, but he started it really flat-footed. But he went back to the kicking game, and it worked well. He sort of drifted away from that ever so slightly in the second, but in the third, he went back to it, and it worked really well. And I scored the third round for Max again. Dustin was finding the range a lot better in that third round with the lead right hand with the jab, and again into the fourth. The fourth round again, I just think Max won it on volume, and it seems silly to score a fight on volume, but I do think that's the case. Max did win the fight on volume. I personally believe. Start of the fifth round, phenomenal. Everybody in the arena on their feet. Max Holloway appreciating Dustin Poirier for what a career he's had. Dustin Poirier appreciating Max Holloway for stepping in there and giving him the opportunity for a hometown fight, for his last ever fight, and for being the kind of opponent we all want to see. We all want to see two men just throw it down, and Max and Dustin did just that for the full 25 minutes. For me, it looked like Dustin Poirier took the shots a lot better in the latter end of the fight. Towards the fourth round and definitely in the fifth, better than he did in the first 2 rounds. In that first round, he was dropped. In the second round, he was badly hurt, and he was taking the shots because Max was landing. Max landed 44 strikes in the fourth round and 46 significant strikes in the final round. Most of them were probably in the last 10 seconds, but Dustin took them better in the latter stages of the round, stages of the fight, than he did in the early stages of the fight. Absolute legends, the pair of them. Really fun fight, really great fight. Max's interview was everything after the fight. This is not my moment. Yeah, he kind of won the fight, and he handed the moment to Dustin Poirier. And I'm glad it was DC that interviewed Dustin Poirier, not Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's a legend of the game, no doubt in it. But DC and Dustin Poirier have got that kind of relationship, the sort of Louisianan relationship, as it were. But I just want to touch on the perfect storm that was that fight. We didn't need the BMF belt attached to it. No one really cared, to be honest, I don't think, about that BMF belt. And I think it showed the pulling power of these two, what can only be described as of legends of the UFC. Both of them are Hall of Famers without a doubt. I'm just double checking how many pay-per-views Dustin Poirier has headlined, because I know that it's a lot. He's headlined 8 pay-per-views, 8 pay-per-view events. His first, and it's so fitting. His first pay-per-view headliner was Holloway 2, and his final one was Holloway 3. I think deep down, Justin is going to be kicking himself that he didn't start the fight a little bit quicker. But with that being said, Max started in third gear, maintained third gear, and then went up to fourth, and then went up to fifth. Max is phenomenal. I think Max, similar to what I'm going to say about Oleksandr Usyk in a minute, I think Max makes his opponents work when they're out of range because he is so long with those teep kicks. Sorry, when they're out of range, because he's so long with those teep kicks, he's making his opponent work, and I think Dustin was working a lot harder than he maybe anticipated he would have had to early on in the fight, and that's obviously what kind of gave Max. I don't think Dustin gassed out by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that's what gave Max the edge. What's next for each man? Now, Dustin Poirier, ride off into the sunset. I don't see Dustin being the kind of guy like a Jose Aldo, like many, many fighters that we see to retire and then come back a few years later. I think that's it for fighting for Dustin Poirier. His post-fight press conference, he alluded to the sort of charity work that he does. I think he's going to throw himself fully in on that, and that is amazing. It just kind of tells you the kind of human being that he is. And I think that he's going to do a lot of work with the UFC. I think you're going to see him on a lot of panels. I think you're going to see him. To be honest, I'd love to see him do a show similar to what Tom Aspinall does with TNT Sports, the sort of Fight Lab, because he's so intelligent, he's so well-rounded as a fighter, as a mixed martial artist, and he's fought a who's who, especially in the lightweight division and sort of in the featherweight division as well. And I think you need to get Dustin Poirier, maybe not his own show, but I would listen to a Dustin Poirier preview podcast, a technical preview podcast, much like the MMA Sucker podcast, before every lightweight big fight, because he's just going to know what to look out for, what opponents are going to do, what fighters are going to do, and rightfully so. For Max Holloway, it's a difficult one because he is now in a division where the man who holds the belt in the division is the man who's just who's pretty much just knocked him out the fight before to capture the belt, Ilia Topuria. Now, it's really hard to match Max Holloway now because he's dangerous and there's not an awful lot of upside, other than the BMF belt, which I guess it's got upside in itself. But I would really be interested in Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira. Assuming that Arman Tsarukyan and Ilia Topuria are next, I'd really be interested in that fight. I'd also really be interested in Max Holloway versus Dan Hooker. I think that would be a phenomenal fight. Hooker's on a 3-fight winning streak. Obviously, Charles Oliveira, Max has got history with Charles with the sort of shoulder or collarbone injury that Charles suffered when those two guys fought back at, it would have been at featherweight, of course. But for me, I really do think that either one of those two fights are what's going to be next for Max. And what is it, July now? I can see him being out there in maybe that New York card. I don't think, let me just double check, but I'm pretty sure Max Holloway has never fought in New York. Now, if I'm Max, no, he hasn't fought in New York from what I can see. Now, if I'm Max, I ask for Hooker or Oliveira on that New York card at the beginning or middle of November that it's usually slated for. And I think a win over either of those men get him a title shot. Whether it's Ilia Topuria, whether it's Arman Tsarukyan, whoever it is at the time, I think that gets him a lightweight title shot. He is 33 years old. He has not got years and years left in the game. You look at Dustin Poirier, he's 36 years old. So let's say Max has got 3 years left in the game. I think by the middle of next year, he could have a international fight week next year. He could have a lightweight title shot if he gets through whoever his opponent may be next. Moving on from the main event, we have the co-main event. Like I said, it's over there. Don't know why UFC 318 rest of the card is below PFL Africa, but it is what it is. Rest of the card, co-main event, Costa versus Kopylov. I'm surprised. Paulo Costa looked like vintage Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa looked good. Who is this Paulo Costa we are seeing before us? I think Kopolov made it very easy for Paulo Costa to look good because Kopolov looked absolutely terrified of everything that Costa threw at him, from jabs to the power shots, the kicks. My ribs just hurt from watching that fight. The kicks of Costa, we always know that they're dangerous, the kicks of Paulo Costa, but it's the sheer sort of torque that he gets on those kicks, which is what makes me feel a little bit sick sometimes. Um, what I would say is the first 2 rounds, anyway, looked like vintage Paulo Costa. Really good, really quick. Was able to land the heavy, heavy strikes with his hands and then mix it through with his kicks. I think he shot. I can't remember if that was in the second or third round, but he definitely shot in for a takedown. He didn't land it. But I think that the knockdown from Costa in the first round just stunned Kopolov and sent him into almost a state of shock. He didn't want it anymore, Kopolov, from that first knockdown in the first round. Did he gas out in that third round? Not particularly. I'm just looking at the numbers here. He did throw less in that third round. Kopolov did land more, but Kopolov knew he was behind, so that's probably why he did go on the front foot a little bit. What I really would have wanted to see from Roman Kopolov is, look, you're on a 2-fight winning streak. You haven't had the most smooth ride in the UFC, obviously getting choked out by Fluffy, starting your career 0-2 in the UFC. You've got knockout power. He knows he's got knockout power. Just go for it. Just go for it in that last round. 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28. 29-28 was probably that. Well, it would have been that final round. But what I would say is that if this fight was early in Paulo Costa's career, I'd say he has tons of potential. You know, he did gas out a little bit in that third round. He didn't look great in that third round. But I'd say that there's tons of potential. But because it's not early, because he's not early in his career, I'm not convinced that he can improve from this performance. And now, is that good enough to get back to where he wants to be? He called out Chimaev. I mean, Chimaev's got a date with Dustin Poirier. I hope not. With Dricus du Plessis. He's fought. Paulo Costa is not a big name anymore, in my opinion, in the middleweight division. He's not getting the Khamzat Chimaev fight. I mean, if Chimaev loses to Dricus, maybe you book that. But can you guarantee that either guy actually makes weight, or makes the walk at least to that fight? I don't know what's next for Paulo Costa, but I'm not convinced that he can improve from that performance that he showed against Roman Kopolov. Brilliant performance. I'm taking nothing away from Paulo Costa, but Roman Kopolov is the 14th ranked man in the division. Paulo Costa was the 13th. I don't think they'll change the rankings around. I haven't seen that they have anyway. Mainly because they've got a fight to sell with Rania Derrida, ranked number 12 this coming weekend. I don't see Paulo Costa progressing too much after this win. It's great to get back in the win column for Paulo Costa, first time in 3 years. So fair play to him. It was a good performance, but like I say, I'm not overly convinced that he can get any better after that. What I thought should have been fight of the night was Kevin Holland versus D-Rod. What a scrap this was. First round, Kevin Holland, I wouldn't say dominated, but he was in my opinion, he was more active. He was landing the slightly bigger shots. But he does, for such a tall guy, he does tend to put himself in danger when he maybe shouldn't. And we saw that in the second round. 2 knockdowns for D-Rod. Holland was in a world of trouble. You know, how often do we see Kevin Holland properly shoot for a takedown? And he had to in that second round. He was badly hurt. And then in the third round, D-Rod was badly hurt. You know, he was dropped with the uppercuts. And if Kevin Holland didn't want to sort of go for the viral flying knee knockout, he may have got the finish. He may have forced the referee to stand in. But as soon as he jumped for that flying knee, I think he did it 2 or 3 times. D-Rod was able to kind of, close the distance a little bit more. It's a shame for Kevin Holland that he lost the fight because he was gathering momentum. But it showed that if you can't beat D-Rod, with the greatest of respect to Daniel Rodriguez, who fought a fantastic, fantastic fight at UFC 318, he's not ready to mix it with the elite of the division. What I would say now is what's next for each man. I always like to look at this. Kevin Holland was ranked 13 going into the fight. It's difficult because MVP was ranked number 15, and he hasn't. I think he won his last fight against Shara Bullet. D-Rod now deserves. Maybe we'll have Kevin Holland drop out of the top 15, and D-Rod sort of take his place at 15 and move everyone up a bit. I'm not quite sure. As far as names are concerned, D-Rod's got to be looking up the division now. I mean, he hasn't fought MVP, whereas Kevin Holland has. So maybe that's something we could look at, a D-Rod versus MVP fight. I mean, it's all right. I'm not overly convinced that that's a sort of really fun fight that fans are going to want to see. Just having a look at the welterweight rankings on Tapology here, Kevin Holland ranked number 24. It's difficult. Maybe he takes a little bit of a step down, fights a Mike Malott, or I mean, Santiago Ponzinibbio is coming off a loss to D-Rod as well, so that could be a potential fight. I mean, is Michael Chiesa still fighting? I know they fought in 2023, but Chiesa is now on a much better run. I don't know. I'm not sure what's next for either man, but it was definitely a fun scrap. I thought it should have been fight of the night, but obviously Vettori and Allen got that. Moving on, just going to touch on these last two quickly. Dan Ige loses to Patricio Pitbull, who picks up his first UFC win after that disappointing debut against Yair Rodriguez. I thought that this was the way that the fight was going to play out. I expected Pitbull to actually have a little bit more success when he did take the fight to the floor. But I still think that the UFC jitters are getting to him ever so slightly. I don't think he seems his usual fluid, flowing self. I don't know if it's just because of his age that he's not. But I mean, he did well in this one. He was able to defend a lot of the strikes that Danny Ige threw at him. Ige threw 145 strikes and only landed 59. It's not a bad clip at all, but when you've got the power of Danny Ige, for Patricio Pitbull to be kind of on his toes the entire fight and have to, have that in the back of his mind if he lands, I'm out. It's something you got to be aware of. What I would say is that, I mean, he called out Aaron Pico. I don't want to see two Bellator guys fight in the UFC. The whole point, I thought, of bringing over these Bellator guys is to fight guys who are in the UFC. I don't want to see that personally. Dan Ige was ranked number 11. Bryce Mitchell will probably, I mean, how he's newly ranked at featherweight, but he's moving down to bantamweight. I don't know. Calvin Qatar is still ranked. I think they'll both drop out because we've got two number 15s for some reason. And Patricio Pitbull will go in there. Lerone Murphy, maybe the loser of Aljo and Brian Ortega. He just wasn't ready to take that step up to number 3 status of Arnold Allen. Of Yair Rodriguez, sorry. Arnold Allen would be a great fight. Michael Johnson, just doing Michael Johnson, old Manning almost. Daniel Zellhuber. I mean, yeah, he just showed that he was it sounds silly, he was the better fighter in there. There's not that there's not that much to it. He's always had really good boxing. He dropped Zellhuber in that second round. And I think he just showed with that experience of being in the UFC. I mean, let's check when his UFC debut was. I mean, his UFC debut was in 2010. I'm not even sure if Zellhuber had made his debut in 2010. he was 6 years away from his MMA debut. Now, Zal Huber's 26 and he's got a massive career ahead of him. He has lost 2 on the spin now. It is what it is. And Michael Johnson's won 3 on the spin, a little bit of a career revival for him. He hasn't won 3 on the spin since 2015 when he beat Joe Lozon, Gleison Tibau, Melvin Gilead, Edson Barboza, and then he lost to Beneil Dariush on a split. I mean, impressive stuff. What is the back end of his career? You know, he's 39. Highlights on the prelims for me: Vinicius Oliveira is just living up to all of the hype. I sort of became aware of Oliveira when he landed that flying knee. He then beat Ricky Simone, Saeed Nurmagomedov, and Kyler Phillips. Where is he ranked? He was ranked number 15. He'll take Kyler Phillips's number 12 spot. I think he really needs to look up the division. Someone like a Marlon Vera for Vinicius Oliveira, for Vinicius Oliveira next, I think would be a phenomenal scrap. And he deserves it. He really does deserve it. Elsewhere, Brendan Allen, Marvin Vettori, that was a little bit disappointing. I mean, the fight itself was good, but I expected a little bit more from Marvin Vettori. Again, these are just fringe guys. Dulatov, horrible, savage knockout performance of the night against Adam Fugit. From being he was a runway model. I can't remember for which company it was. I mean, he's modelled for brands such as Gucci and Alexander McQueen. He's been on GQ, Hugo Boss, British Vogue, and now he's knocking guys out in the UFC. He lost his debut in 2019. Since then, he's been on a 12-fight winning run. He's a problem at welterweight. Jimmy Crute finally back in the win column. I mean, it's been a hot second. I said, I don't know why Jimmy Crute is still in the UFC. He hasn't won since 2020. He's retired in that time. But he picked up a good armbar submission over Martin Prashnio. Prashnio he's going to win 2. He's going to lose 3. He's going to win 1. He's going to lose 1. It is what it is. But it's nice to see Jimmy Crute back in the win column. And then Carly Judice, however you say Carly Judice, Carly, who opened up the prelims. Wow, what a finish that was. I had to watch it 2 or 3 times and I had to then watch it from a different angle because I wasn't quite sure whether the knee landed on the chin or whether it was a body shot. It was a body shot. I love a body shot, and it was horrible. It was a horrible body shot to watch. It made me feel sick just watching it, similar to the Paulo Costa fight, but it was a really, really good finish. Before UFC 318 took place, however, we had PFL Africa. First ever sort of mainstream MMA card from Africa, in my opinion. Mainstream. You got UFC, Bellator, PFL, one championship kind of, but like big promotion. And they touched down in Cape Town. And this is not a fight card that I expected to go this way in any way, shape, or form. You obviously had a lot of local kind of talent on the undercard. Abraham Balbi picked up a massive knockout in the last second of the first round. He spoke really well. He just wanted to get in there. I was in on the press conference on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. He just wanted to get in there and fight, and he did so. And he did so in a violent manner. Corey Anderson beat Denis Goltsov, and interestingly, on Wednesday, I asked him whether he'd look to play the bad guy and call out the sort of hometown hero, as it were. Not hometown, but the sort of the hero of Africa, Francis Ngannou. And he said he doesn't even know if Francis Ngannou is in the PFL anymore. He hasn't seen him about. We didn't see anything from Francis, despite the fact that he's supposed to be the ambassador for PFL Africa. Obviously, he's dealing with some stuff in his personal life this year, so that's potentially why. I think Corey Anderson versus Nemkov 3 is probably the fight to make it heavyweight. It's a great fight. They've obviously got history. It's a completely different fight to their first 2 because of the disparity now in, it's a different weight class, but it's a good performance from Corey Anderson. AJ McKee, I got a bit of flack online. I tweeted, this is the reason that AJ McKee has not been looked at by the UFC, and the likes of Aaron Pico We know Dakota Ditcheva, who I'm going to go on to talk about in a minute, has Patricio Pitbull. These guys are being looked at to bring over from, Bellator or the PFL or whoever it might be. AJ McKee is not the most entertaining fighter, let's just say that. Very, 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 very talented. Really, really good. He's 30 years old and he's got a very good professional record, 23-2. And I mistakenly, and I was corrected by Paul Brown on Twitter. I said that he hasn't finished a fight since 2021. He finished Clay Collard last year. I missed that one out. But Sydney Outlaw, Roberto De Souza, Spike Carlisle. Spike Carlisle, remember him from UFC days? He's not a great fighter. He went the distance with him. He beat Ahmed Magomedov, which is, I mean, it's a good win. It's definitely a good win, but nobody's talking about it. Because of what happened in the main and co-main events, yes, but AJ McKee needed to steal the headlines, and I don't think that he did. I don't think that he put in a fun, exciting enough performance to steal the headlines. Very wrestling heavy, very sort of defensive wrestling heavy, and not awfully attacking when he was on his back. Someone that did steal the headlines is my favourite fighter to watch at the moment, and I don't think it's going to be any surprise to anybody listening, especially not my former co-host Tim Wheaton. I put Tim Wheaton onto Dakota Ditcheva. It's my claim to fame. I interviewed her just before her PFL debut. I watched a lot of her fights when she was fighting at I think it was UAE Warriors she fought at before joining the PFL, and Palace Athena. But she's amazing. I tweeted out and questioned whether there is a more effective fighter in MMA today in the clinch than Dakota Ditcheva, and I don't think there is. I really don't think there is. She is phenomenal when the fight gets to the clinch. She is horrible when the fight gets to the clinch. If you're an opponent, if you're a team, if you're a member of Team Ditcheva, or if you are Dakota Ditcheva herself, you love it. She is amazing in the clinch. She's so tight in the clinch, and it's not just knees. It's knees to the legs, it's knees to the body, knees up top, it's elbows from different angles, straight, round, up elbow. So violent. She will mix the ranges that she fights at. She can fight long. We saw her. Is it Inaba? Her opponent. Not quite sure what her game plan was. She kind of just crashed forward, landed some punches to the body, got stuck in the clinch, got battered, reset, crash forward, landed some shots in to Dakota's body in the clinch, got battered, reset, and again, and rinse and repeat. It is what it is. But we saw Dakota fight at many different ranges in this fight. We saw her fight in the clinch, as we know she's phenomenal at. Saw some takedown defense, although Inaba definitely could have done more, but Dakota showed some takedown defense. Characteristically, it was amazing takedown defense, but it wasn't, in my opinion, didn't have to be over the top amazing. We saw her fight at range, long, which she was much taller than her opponent. She was landing piston jabs, and she throws really good, just rear straights, and they shouldn't be landing so effectively, in my opinion, at the highest level of MMA. For a fighter to stand there and just bang throw straight down the pipe, and with no sort of jab in front of it, jab behind it, just bang straight down the pipe, and she was landing them. She landed front kicks to the body, she was landing front kicks to the face. And then the final round came where we've seen that she's now hurt her hand. I tweeted out that I thought that she'd hurt her hand because she wasn't throwing her right hand at all. And then it turns out it was actually her left hand, which is kind of ironic that I picked up on it and I picked up on the wrong hand. It is what it is. But we saw Inaba just show crazy heart, and she's definitely going to be rewarded for the PFL for that performance. You know, Dakota is a finisher. Ask all of the girls that she's fought beforehand, apart from one. She is a finisher. She's finished 13 of 15 fights now. But she obviously hurt herself. She saw that Inaba was hard to finish. So what did she do? She started mixing it up. Brutal low kicks. Well, if I can't finish you, I'm going to try and render you unable to continue by rendering you sort of stuck almost on the floor. She wasn't able to do it. She went the full 50 minutes. I think she was upset. Well, she was upset. We saw that. But it's a different mindset from Dakota Ditcheva. She complained that she'd been out for so long. She only fought in November. Yeah, for 8 months. But some fighters are out for a year and a half. John Jones. When's the last time we saw John Jones? And then the time before that. When's the last time we saw him before that? I mean, she complained that she'd been out for so long, and yet she'd only been out for 8 months. I haven't heard anything yet. I will have to do my research as to see if she's had a scan on that hand, see how that hand is. I haven't seen anything. I'll just quickly check on Google to see if anything has come out about her hand. But as of yet, I haven't. No, I haven't. Can't see anything about Ditcheva having had a scan and having that confirmed as a maybe a broken hand or something like that. Just checking on Twitter, but she did. No, so there's nothing at the moment on Twitter or out about her potential broken hand. But she did say that she's re-signed with the PFL, which is good. I hope that agreement with the PFL came with a promise that you will get me more competitive fights, because with the greatest of respect to Inaba, although she was tough as hell, she was outmatched in there. Which is what I would think, what I thought would happen in the main event. Costello Van Steenis versus Johnny Eblen. I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch this one in nearly as much detail as I did Dakota Ditcheva's fight, because I don't find Johnny Eblen, who is a dominant champion, don't get me wrong, I don't find him entertaining to watch. He's very wrestling heavy, he's very risk averse, he's very position over submission, he's very position over ground and pound. So I had this fight on, but I had it on in the background. And as bad as that sounds, you look at his record since joining Bellator, he's got 3 finishes in 12 fights. So forgive me for not being glued to the screen. But what a phenomenal comeback. Because in my opinion, Van Steenis he was losing the fight. He was just unable to get as much offense off as Johnny Eblen. And yet he pulled off a fantastic finish. That rear naked choke, choking Johnny Eblen unconscious. Not just choking him out, choking him unconscious. Now, I think that that's just going to lead to almost an immediate rematch. As soon as both men are fit again, I think that will lead to an immediate rematch. But then you've got to consider that Fabian Edwards has history with both guys. He's got a win over Van Steenis, who will want to get that one back. He's got a loss to Van Steenis, and he'll want to get that one back. And obviously, he's got multiple losses to Johnny Eblen. I think Fabian Edwards is in a phenomenal position right now. Really, really do. But PFL Africa, I'd put that down as being a huge success. Moving on and finishing the podcast, I just really wanted to touch quickly on Oleksandr Usyk, because he is the greatest heavyweight of a generation. He has single-handedly killed British heavyweight boxing, and weirdly enough, I'm here for it. I don't know why, and I shouldn't be. I should be wanting Anthony Joshua to win. I should be wanting Daniel Dubois to win. Should be wanting Tyson Fury to win. And yet Usyk just battered each and every one of them. I'm going to see if I can get a screenshot of the shot that he landed or the recording. 1 second. So here is the recording of Usyk knocking out Dubois in the 5th round. I'll just play it through a few times. That is a crazy shot. That is a heavy, heavy knockout. And if you just slow it right down, when Usyk lands the left hook on Daniel Dubois, his back foot is off the floor. Now, I tweeted about this. You can go to my Twitter at Frazer Krohn MMA. I tweeted a screenshot of Usyk's back foot, because Usyk's back foot is off the floor when he lands that shot. It's a phenomenal shot. He was near flawless from start to finish of that fight in Wembley. And you've got to start asking questions. You know, I don't know nearly as much about boxing as I do about MMA, but I cannot see how anyone beats Oleksandr Usyk. He, like I was saying earlier with Max, he makes his opponents work when they don't want to work. He gets himself crowded up against the fence and expertly, you know, he'll throw a couple of shots. He got Daniel to back up, and then he regains centre ring. The jab from the first, I think he landed 3 or 4 heavy jabs to Daniel in the first round. Daniel Dubois, let's not forget, it's coming off a big knockout of Anthony Joshua, finish of Jarrell Miller, for what that's worth. You know, a dominant win over Filip Hrgovic. He's a very, very, very heavy hitter, and he was full of confidence in that one. And Usyk just went in there and dominated him and kind of beat him at his own game. He knocked him out in a tight exchange. You know, I've just shown you the video. It's a phenomenal performance. And like I said, I don't know what's next for Oleksandr Usyk. He called out, I think, everyone that's ever pulled on a pair of boxing gloves, and that's crazy for someone that is the undisputed champion to be calling out more fights. You know, he's the hunted, and he should be treated as so. You've got Anthony Joshua, doesn't deserve the shot. Daniel Dubois doesn't deserve the shot. Tyson Fury doesn't deserve the shot. Faced off with Jake Paul. I mean, it's what it is. If he goes in there, you know, you could give Jake Paul a 12-week training camp. Usyk could literally get off the sofa and kill this guy. Then you've got the two names who I think that it should be. It should either be Ajit Kabayel or Joseph Parker. I'm leaning towards Joseph Parker, who should have got the shot against Daniel Dubois. Obviously, Dubois had to pull out of that one, bringing in Bacoli. Parker blew him away in a couple of rounds. I think that it should be Joseph Parker. I would love Joseph Parker versus Oleksandr Usyk in Wembley. I think people bought tickets on Saturday night to see Oleksandr Usyk rather than to see Daniel Dubois. Correct me if I'm wrong. Get in the comments. Let me know if you do think I'm wrong. But I think that that's what happened. People filled out Wembley, packed out Wembley to see Oleksandr Usyk fight in comparison to Daniel Dubois. Obviously, there were Dubois fans in there, but you know what I mean. The majority of people were there to see Oleksandr Usyk. I think if you put Usyk versus Parker in Wembley, I think it's a sellout again. I think people will buy tickets to see that fight. Whatever's next for Usyk, for me, he is the greatest heavyweight of my personal generation. I wasn't old enough to see Lennox Lewis. I wasn't really old enough to see Klitschko's proper reign. He is without a shadow of a doubt the greatest heavyweight of my generation, and I am lucky to be living in a generation where I get to see Oleksandr Usyk fight as regularly as he does. That is it for our UFC 318 and PFL Africa and Usyk kind of breakdown. Later on in the week, I will be dropping a preview video for this weekend's UFC Abu Dhabi card. I might have a little look at some things we can do around that on Saturday night. Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree that Usyk is the best of a generation? Do you agree that Max Holloway should probably fight either Dan Hooker or Charles Oliveira next? And who do you think will be next for Dakota Ditcheva? Also, let me know, do you like the new streaming setup? I'm trying something here. If it's not good, I'll just go back to my old one. But who knows? Who knows? I'm hoping that there hasn't been too many teething problems. Thank you guys for listening. Like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I will catch you next time.